and welcome back to TNN's coverage of the world's 9 best fantasy football players league. I'm your host, and this is what we have for you this week. It's now week 12, and the trade deadline is rapidly approaching as teams approach their second crack at their divisional rivals. With that being said, Commissioner Tooch has asked me to pass along a message to Brett, Will, Vanek, and Joe, reminding them to pay their $50 buy-in. And now, here is Danny Football with his picks for Week 12.
Hey, what's up, guys? World's 9 best fantasy football players expert, Danny Football here, back with another week of expert predictions. Last week, pretty good for me, going 4-2, bringing my total on the year up to a very nice 38-16. My guest, Brett, unfortunately went 3-3, being unable to beat the expert. But now, it's a new week, there's a new guest, and a new chance to beat the expert. So, guest, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
What's up, everybody? It's the owner of Team Vanek, and it's very good to see you again, Danny Football. It's been a while, my old
It
friend. So
has.
thanks for having me back on your show. You know, I'm a huge fan of your show. I watch every week, and have purposely not paid my buy-in for many weeks until now. So I paid it. Let the record show I paid it, and I
hmm
just thanks for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to making some picks with you, and hopefully beating the expert this week.
Yeah, I was starting to get a little worried. I know Commissioner Tooch was getting a little squirrely about not getting the buy-in, and he was whispering in my ear that if you did not pay the buy-in, even if you beat the expert, you would not be able to come back for the playoffs. So
Oh, that's
glad
classic
you paid
Commissioner
up.
T.
He's a real tyrant, but
No fun.
the people's voice will always prevail. You did beat the expert last year, so I am looking for a chance to redeem myself here. We'll see if you're back in the playoffs.
All right.
All right, first up, we have Hammond Throw taking on Jesus Christ. It's Jay Sanborn. Hammond Throw favorite at 69% in this one. With a little caveat on all these matchups, we are filming this very early. There are a lot of empty spots in a lot of these lineups. So, everyone takes the sleeper projections with a grain of salt as they are, but add a little extra grain of salt on top of all of these. These are two teams that really, I think, have kind of underperformed expectations for this year. Hammond Throw, of course, we all know they're always talking a huge game, and they're kind of sitting there right on the fringe of the playoffs. Not a great spot for them. I think if this team did not have Mike Visconti as its owner, they would probably be selling going into the trade deadline this week, which, as a reminder, this is the last week to make any trades. Week 12, end of the Monday night matchups. That's something me, as the expert, I'm going to have my eye on this week. Could be some movement. There's been no movement at all in this league this year.
That's wild. Yeah.
It has been very wild. I think a lot of people have been trying to, hold out, see how it goes. And there's not too many teams that could be selling, especially when you have people like Hammond Throw who should be selling and are refusing to do so. For Jesus Christ, Jay Sanborn, look, their season is over. They're one of these teams I think could be selling, should be selling, and they haven't had the best season. I know Nooch did not have the highest of expectations, but after the hot start, they have really cooled off. And I'm very curious to see how this team builds for the future. It's not a team I'm super interested in seeing the on field performance this year, but this is still a matchup I have to pick. And very reluctantly, just based on the talent alone, which is a wild sentence to say when you're talking about this absolutely putrid Hammond Throw team, but Jesus Christ, Jay Sanborn is truly just on another level. You cannot out compete this team in the race to the bottom. So I am going to very reluctantly going to have to go with Hammond Throw to get the win in this one.
Yeah, I think that's a smart pick, Danny Football. I wrote down some notes prior to our call. As you know, I always come prepared. And
We love your expert analysis.
thank you. I do appreciate that. And the one note I made for this is snoozer matchup. That was the big note that I
Hmm.
wrote without anything else.
You can
So
thank the
uh,
TNN producers for putting it as number one to be talked about here.
yes, thank you.
Number
Just
one
get it
for a
out of the way.
reason.
Yeah. Um, some things that are interesting though, Hammond Throw playing against his Lord and Savior Drake May on the opposing side. I saw that Nooch
Hmm.
was playing him, so we'll see how that he handles that as a team. Hammond Throw, just kind of the definition of mid, as the kids say nowadays.
Hmm.
It's just like nothing special about it. Just kind of coasts through. He's a perpetual 500 team that just gets booted out of the playoffs the first week every year, and it's just the same story gets written every single
Hmm.
year. Jesus Christ, it's Jay Sanborn. Yeah, he's in a rebuild year, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. As someone who was in a rebuild a couple years ago, you just got to trust the process and just trust that things work out. Um, I think that starts with changing his namesake. If your team namesake is Jack Sanborn, I think you got a real issue. So Nooch, that might be something to think about, an easy fix, as they
Mm.
say,
He's a
going
real
into
locker
next
room
year.
guy. They
That's
say
that
that.
is true. That's true.
Sanborn.
Yeah. But I think you said it best, Danny Football. It's just like there's not much to get excited about this matchup, but I will give Hammond throw the edge, and I think that he pulls out with the win.
Next up, we have Worthy of Love taking on the Judon Noodles. Noodles currently favored at 83%. Who do you like in this one?
So I was looking at this matchup, and both teams have a lot of buys this week. I think that goes for all the teams this week. One of the things I noticed, the big bye week.
Hmm.
A lot of players are currently on bye. Let's see, with the Worthy of Love, they have a bleak quarterback situation going on.
Hmm.
With Dak out, I think they have Derek Carr who's on bye, so they don't currently have a rostered quarterback to play this week. Again, we are filming Tuesday night, so I'm sure that's going to change. But things aren't looking too good for Worthy of Love going into the matchup.
Could be a big
Uh,
waiver week this week.
it could be a massive waiver week. That's the expert analysis we're looking for when people watch the show. The Judon Noodles, I think they have a good team. McCaffrey, they got Lamar Jackson. They don't have a great wide receiver core, but they got a solid defense. I think their good wide receivers are on bye this week too. Um, do you have the record in front of you, Danny Football? They're like pretty decent, aren't they? Like six,
The
7,
Noodles,
yeah,
I believe 6 wins. Six
6
wins for the
wins,
Noodles.
yeah. So they're hanging in there. I think they're going to make a good run at the end of the season. So I'm going to go ahead with the Noodles for this matchup.
Yeah, I like that pick here. Worthy of Love. I, as we all know, I have not been very high on this team this year. I've not been very kind to this team this year. So I I will acknowledge the viewer request to give Worthy of Love some props. They did have a very nice week last week. It was not enough for the win, but they did still have a nice week, something to hang your hat on if you're someone in the locker room over there. There is some potential for this team, and look, we'll see. Maybe this team could make that Team Mvanek type leap next year, going from worst all the way up to second. For the Judon Noodles, as we all know, this is another team I have been very low on this year. I have been raising the alarm since week one, saying that this team is fraudulent and they are only in the playoffs because of the three divisions that we have. I would like to formally petition the league right now to abolish the playoff system. We should just have the two best teams in the league go at it in the championship, and let's just leave it at that. We don't need to mix things up with letting in all these mediocre teams into the playoffs. We only care about two teams in this league anyway, so let's just have the Yankees versus the Dodgers every year, two best teams duke it out, and unfortunately neither of these teams will be in that conversation. The Judon Noodles somehow in this absolutely atrocious, awful, no good, very bad division that is the Pac 4. I think they are likely to get that playoff spot here. I think Hammond Throw's going to kind of be chomping, trying to catch up. I don't know if it's going to be enough. We don't have that many weeks left in the season, only three to go. Going to be very hard to maneuver ahead of teams, especially with that one game advantage that the Judon Noodles have. I don't like their situation this week, as you mentioned, a lot of buys. But Tom's situation over with Worthy of Love is not one that is going to be conducive to a win. It would be very unexpert like of me to pick Worthy of Love. So I will give them their little shout out. Congratulations, Worthy of Love. You didn't do terribly last week, but I'm going to go with the Judon Noodles to get a win in this one.
Good pick. And for the record, I signed your petition. I'll be the first to sign it.
Abolish the playoffs.
Abolish the playoffs. Make the regular season matter.
Next up, we have too many Conks taking on Big Chungus 22. Conks currently favored at 88%. This is, look, Will and Team Big Chungus 22. I know Will is a huge fan of the show, so I hope that he gets my message that he needs to set his lineup. This team has a lot of buys this week, and not a lot of depth on the roster to fill in those empty spots in their starting lineup. If I was a Team Big Chungus 22 fan, I would be very, very concerned this week. Not a lot of guys are going to be available. They're going up against a team in Too Many Conks that scored over 300 points this past week. Let's sit there and think about this. Over 300 points for Too Many Conks. This has single-handedly put them back into the thick of playoff contention. Before they were down a little bit on the points for, and they have just skyrocketed back up there with the top teams in this league. So now they don't even have this huge points for tiebreaker hanging around their neck where they're going to lose out on that to every team in the playoffs. They are fully in it. They can go out there. Look, if things get a little crazy, they could maybe win the division. They're definitely in the thick of it for the playoff chase. And I expect this team to get a very nice win over Team Big Chungus 22 this week. I'm going to go with the Conks. Keep the momentum rolling and pick up a win here.
I think that's a good pick, Danny Football. I think you said it best yourself, Big Chungus. Although I know he is a big fan of the show, I've heard he listens multiple times each week to the show at his lunch hour every week.
I heard that Will has actually created multiple YouTube accounts to boost up the numbers,
boost engagement, yeah,
and also always likes, comments, subscribes, and hits the bell. So for all of the fans of the show out there, you need to step your game up. Team Big Chungus 22 and Will DeTremp are the number one fans here at TNN.
That's true. But with Team Big Chungus, you really hate to see the lackadaisical ownership in the league. It's just it might be a real sell the team type situation that we're infringing upon. Looking into future years, you might have to look for some outside investors to take over, maybe give a little bit of stake in the team. Because right now I think the fans are getting pretty tired of the ownership, which you really hate to see it because Big Chungus is a good guy. He's a really good guy, but when it comes to the football team, the fans are getting irritated.
I've heard the vultures are circling. They're sitting there with their big pockets, waiting to pounce on the carcass of Team Big Chungus 22.
Although to be fair, Big Chungus very, very unlucky team.
Yes.
They have a very good points for, I've noticed, and just has some brutal losses so far. So that probably doesn't add a lot to team morale. You don't really want to show up week in week out when you're that unlucky. But that is worth noting. They are a very unlucky team. Too Many Conks, I think, is a great team, and as you mentioned, really skyrocketed with that massive week. That's got to be is that a record, Danny Football? Are the statisticians?
I believe that is the second highest score in league history, behind the Mental Brick Walls when they had Khalil Mack go off for 60 points.
But still, nevertheless, very solid showing by the Conks. They got Saquon, Mahomes, Zay Flowers, Cooper Kupp still holding on, Micah Parsons. They do have a really solid team. They probably should be
Hmm.
better than 6-5. I'm not sure about their luck matrix, but I think this is a team that can definitely make a run later in the season, and I think that they do take care of Big Chungus this week.
Moving on, we have the mental brick walls taking on Team M Vanek. Brick walls favored narrowly at 53%. Who do you like in this matchup?
Uh, Horrible. This isn't the marquee matchup, Danny Football. What do you got your guys? This is like the two best
There's
records
some
in the.
stiff competition for the marquee matchup this week.
Oh my goodness. It's because of the It's the Texarkana Bandits and SWAT team, isn't it? It's one bunch of homers
We'll see.
over at
Stay
the
tuned.
TN studios. Unbelievable. But anyway, mental brick walls, best record in the league, I believe. But they do seem to just kind of sneak by every week. I wouldn't say they have the best team in the league, but they do have the best record, and that's enough for nothing. They are starting Cooper Rush currently, which
Mhm.
might be, you know, fans of the team might not love that. So we'll see if Brett decides to go with Cooper Rush, or maybe check out the wire this week, see if anything catches his eye. Team and Vanek, also a lot of buys this week. And as been documented week in and week out on this show, just not a lot of depth on Team and Vanek, unfortunately. So when there's a lot of buys, and then Team and Vanek currently does not have a running back on the roster that they're able to play because both James Cook and Bijan Robinson are both on bye. So Team Advantage will be checking out the waiver wire. Wait, why can't I say that? Waiver wire after our call tonight, Danny Football. But I gotta go Team Advantage, because why not? I think it'll be a close matchup. I think it's two solid teams, both in very good playoff contention right now. Also a very big game for the division too. Both
Mhm.
sits at the top of the division. There's some stakes into that as well. But I think that Team Vanek sneaks by very narrowly this week.
Yeah, I'm glad you noted the big division stakes in this one. It almost snuck its way up there into marquee matchup because this is one,
Unbelievable.
if the Brick Walls win it, they do lock up that division. Team M Vanek sitting there at 7 wins. If the Brick Walls win, they'll be sitting at 10 with only 2 matchups to go after this. So very big matchup, big implications here. And these are two teams, as you mentioned, are not at their best right now. A lot of buys. Team M Vanek, something I've been harping on all year, not great depth to this team. They've been really lucky of not had too catastrophic of injuries outside of Aiden Hutchinson, but the bye week is something that no man can avoid. And for week 12, it is coming to hit Team M Vanek. For the mental brick walls, this is a team I have my eye laser focused on this week. This is a team that is currently starting Cooper Rush at their quarterback position and has only injured Trevor Lawrence sitting there on the roster. If this team wants to be a serious contender in this league, they need to go out and make some trade this week. I don't know if that's for a quarterback. I don't know if that's for someone they can put in at the flex, but if Trevor Lawrence is not going to be coming back soon, I think this team is dead in the water. I will say it. If they don't go out and do something at quarterback this week and are relying on Cooper Rush and an injured Trevor Lawrence, this team stands no chance in the playoffs. With that being said, though, the buys are hitting teams hard this week, perhaps none harder than Team M Vanek. This is not the marquee matchup that it could be if this was in the playoffs. I expect both of these teams to be firing on all cylinders then. But for right now, this week, I'm going to go with the mental brick walls to pull out the win and lock up the division.
Ooh.
Moving on, we have undefeated, never lost, taking on blood, sweat, and beers. UNL favored in this one at 58%. This is one at this point in the year, very surprising the playoff stakes and implications of this matchup. This division is by far the best in the league. I will say that. I don't think this is a controversial take. Every team in this league is at least somewhat competitive. These are obviously the two teams that are, a slight step down from the Bandits and the SWAT team, but they're both still in the playoff chase. And I would like to give a very warm, hearty congratulations to Undefeated Never Lost. I think this may be the most wins they have ever gotten in a season. And we're sitting here, this is week 12, and we've only played 11 games. So, congratulations to Undefeated Never Lost. You guys have done it. I don't know how this team is not that good, and they've gotten a lot of lucky wins. Like the win last week was disgusting. I just to point out, absolutely disgusting. The fact that this team is ahead of the Bandits in the division, in the playoff chase, is my expert brain cannot even begin to comprehend this. But I think they may have a shot in this one. For Blood, Sweat, and Beers, this is a team I think has definitely outperformed expectations this year. No one really thought they were going to be doing much of anything. If anything, I expected them to be down in that worthy of love, Jesus Christ, it's Jay Sanborn tier of teams. I thought they were at least another year away from even sniffing the playoffs. So congratulations to Jacob and everyone over there at BSB for a great season, regardless of how it turns out from here on out. With that being said, though, I think this team is perhaps not yet ready for the big time. But luckily for them, the big time is not going up against UNL. I'm going to go with Blood, Sweat, and Beers to put UNL back in their place, make the playoff race a little bit more interesting, and Blood, Sweat, and Beers to pick up the win in this one.
Yeah, I think this is two fascinating teams going at it this week with honestly some pretty bright futures for both of them. Historically, not been great past couple years for both teams. But as you mentioned, UNL having a surprisingly decent year so far. I think that UNL is a real whole is greater than the sum of its parts type team. You can't really the motivation and the team morale is just not showing up on the models in a way that it shows up on the field. The Miguel and the whole front office has made some really great hires throughout the time, especially offensive coordinator Danny Stortz, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, I don't know.
Offensive coordinator.
Offensive coordinator Danny Stortz has been a fantastic addition to the team. On the other hand, Blood, Sweat, and Beers, a lot of guys on bye this week. Both his Bengals are on bye, unfortunately, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, who've been kind of the bedrock of his team so far this year. And yeah, like you mentioned, probably not his year, and that's okay. It's been more of a rebuild year for him. But I do think he has a lot to look forward to in the coming years. Brock Bowers, something you can definitely build from there, total stud there. And Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow will be good for years to come. So I think that UNL, I think that the luck's going to continue for him. So I'll go UNL this week. But this is a matchup I have my eye on, Danny football. It'll be very intriguing.
I agree. So it's the fifth one for a reason.
Yeah.
High stakes in this matchup somehow.
Also, that's wild. Miguel won last week with the second lowest points.
The UNL way.
Oh, that's amazing.
Finally, in our marquee matchup of the week, we have the SWAT team taking on the Texarkana Bandits. SWAT currently favored at 64%. Who do you like in this matchup?
You know that I know that you know that fans of the show know that you are high on the Bandits, Danny football.
It is a little
So this,
secret.
yes. So I'd be very intrigued about your pick. SWAT team, I just like the most infuriating, frustrating team that I think we've come across in these last 5 years. It's just the SWAT team's been exceptional the last couple of years and deserves the championship. This year, I believe they are the most fraudulent 9-2 team in league history. It's one of those you can't keep getting away with it. So I just don't think the SWAT team is good this year. And if they just continue to win, it's going to just continue to frustrate both myself and other members of the league. The Bandits, on the other hand, I will say, and I will stand up and say, I think the Bandits have the best team in the league. I was going through the
Mm.
rosters before our call. I know they've dropped four in a row, so locker room's probably pissed right now. They are looking for a big win to overcome the last month, and I think that they have it this week against the SWAT team. I think that they show up this week, especially all the Eagles on their team. I think that they're really hot right now. They're going to show up and they're gonna get a big win over the SWAT team, and that's really going to propel themselves into the last couple weeks of the year and into the playoffs. So I'm going to go with the Bandits in this one, Danny Football.
Yeah, I like that pick here. Look, fans of the show will know that I am high on the Bandits. I have been on the Bandits train since the beginning. If anyone is a bandwagon fan, get on because I've been driving this for years now. This is the biggest matchup of the week. The two top scoring teams in the league. If the SWAT team wins this, they lock up the division. They lock up the first round bye. I mean, of course, undefeated, never lost. They're only 2 games back. They could, in theory, be in it, but the points for is going to be too big of a hurdle for them to get over the next 3 weeks, in my expert opinion. So this is truly a win the division game for the SWAT team. As you mentioned, the SWAT team, they're not sending their best this season. They have been able to scrape and claw their way to a couple close wins, perhaps when they shouldn't have. And this team is really lacking a lot of the star power of teams of old. This is a very aging roster. People have been saying for years now, this team is, this is it. This is the last year. After this, they're going to be old. They're going to fall off. And I'm just not convinced that that's going to be the case. I mean, I have full faith in the commissioner to manage this team. He always does a great job of getting new, fresh, young talent in there to somehow pop off for 1 year and fill in the gaps until some other guy will come in and pop off for 1 year and lead this team to championship after championship after championship after championship after championship. And even though the Bandits are down right now, I know they are not out. I know they're going to be looking to put up a big performance this week against the SWAT team because if they don't, they could be in trouble sitting there at 6-6 with only 2 weeks to go. Anything can happen at that point. We have seen crazier things happen in this league. With that being said, though, as you mentioned, the SWAT team, they just find ways to win. And even though I have been on the Bandits train for a long time, I am the biggest cheerleader of this team in the world. Known to man, no one is a bigger fan of the Bandits than me, but even I have to acknowledge the SWAT team may be an unstoppable force, and I'm going to go with the SWAT team to pick up the win in this one. Well, Vanek, thank you so much for being on this week. It's always great to have you. I'm wishing you all the best of luck with your picks, of course. Not as good as me, can't beat the expert, but it's been great having you. And I'm looking forward to maybe having you back here in the playoffs. Best of luck to you and your team for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much, Danny Football. It's great to see you. It was an honor. Tell the whole football team, the whole football family, I say hi as we go into these playoffs.
And thank you, Danny Football and guest Vanek, for those great picks. That's all we have for you this time. Be sure to tune in next week to see how things shook out. I'm your host, and this has been TNN.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell.